So this is my 1986 300SE. I've owned this car for about 4 years now, and just recently it's had an issue where it was showing low oil pressure on the gauge. That happened really suddenly. I was driving along and then all of a sudden the oil pressure was really low. So the first thing I did was check the oil level, and it was a little low but not drastically low. So I then went and topped that up a little bit, and that didn't make any difference. So at that point I assumed that it was probably the sender. So I ordered a new sender unit and I put that on, and the sender units look like this. This was the old one, original VDO unit from 786, and this was the one I put on, which is also a VDO unit but from 2019. I think this one was. Yeah, 2019. And I still had the same problem. I was pretty confident that it would be the sender unit because they're known to be a bit of a problem, and it was the original one, but it wasn't. So my next stage was to eliminate the wiring and the gauge on the dash. Now, it was probably unlikely that that was the problem, given they don't sort of fail in the way that mine failed, in that when you started the engine it was sort of middle up the gauge, I suppose, and then the pressure would get, it would behave like it normally would. It would just be low. So, you know, at idle it would be almost at zero. When you press the throttle it would go up a bit, but not pegged to 3 like it normally would. So I purchased this mechanical oil pressure gauge, and that goes in here on the filter housing. So you can see where that plugs in there. And the easiest way to get that is you take the filter off. You need to remember to screw it back in properly. I didn't, and sprayed oil all over the floor. But basically I plugged that in and I still had low oil pressure. So I'll show you that now. So you can see here on the gauge it's showing almost nothing. It just comes up a little bit. Normally it should peg to above 3, and even with a completely cold engine, I haven't started this car in a number of days, it's at just over 1, and if I give the engine a bit of throttle it will rise, but not as fast as you'd expect. And then it will quickly settle to lower and lower as the engine warms up and as the oil warms up. So it's not really where it should be, although I am getting pressure. And then the other thing I obviously did is, if you take the cap off, I don't know if it can be seen on the camera here, but if I shine this in there, you should be able to see the oil dripping on the cam there, and so there is pressure. It's just really low on this car. I'll switch it off now. So what are my next steps? Well, there's probably a couple of different possibilities. One is the relief valve, which is either part of or on the oil pump. I'm not quite sure which. That's in the bottom of the engine, and on the 103 engine that this one has, there's not a two-piece oil pan, so the whole engine would have to be jacked up a bit so the pan could come off, or the suspension lowered or something like that, I suppose. So that sounds like a pretty big job. The other thing there could possibly be is, I'm told on one of the forums that there's an oiler tube for the camshaft that's just under the cover here, and that can come loose, and given that my head was off 10,000 Ks ago, that's probably more of a possibility. So my next step will be to take this car down to where I have all my tools, my sort of storage workshop, and then I'll be able to take that off and have a look and see if that's my problem. And if not, then I guess I'll have to take it to a proper workshop to have the oil pan taken off. I mean, it also could be the screen for the oil pump, or it could be something fundamentally wrong with the engine, although I don't think it is. The engine is still running well. It's not making any noise, and the oil pressure didn't gradually get worse and worse. It all of a sudden went bad. So fingers crossed, it's just a problem that can be solved rather than fundamentally anything wrong with the engine on the car.